Welcome to Growth Island, your go-to podcast on how to be the best version of yourself. Now, let's join your host, Mess Freeze, as he interviews high performers and experts in nutrition, meditation, exercise, relationships, business, general health, and life's bigger mysteries.
Welcome to today's episode of Growth Island. Today I got Dasha Maximov in. She's a female biohacker that leads the group Biohacking Women on Facebook. She is also working with Health Optimization Summit, something you're going to learn more about later. She has a yoga instructor certification, and she's been a hardcore businesswoman in PwC, where she was buying and selling companies, also called M&A. So it's going to be super interesting to hear more about her journey into biohacking. So Dasha, welcome so much, and thank you for taking the time.
Sure thing. Thanks, Mads. How's it going?
Really good here in Copenhagen. So Dasha, how did you get into all this biohacking? And how did you go from being like buying and selling companies in PwC to suddenly learning a lot about your health and so on?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the first one is I've always been interested in health. I've always been kind of toying around with it, be it my own food or my own gut things that I was working through in college. Then I got interested in yoga from a stress management perspective, because working in a big company and kind of wanting to always do good and be the best, you do get stressed out. So for me, yoga was a way to get out of that. And then I got interested in brain health. So my story is really one about recovery from brain injury. And from that brain injury, I kind of got into biohacking, into this health optimization, into mitochondrial health. And now just most recently, I've gotten interested in women's health as well. And so I think it's funny because the hacks that I have for health, be it sun staring or ice baths, or now starting to eat DHA and fish, or removing myself from non-native EMFs, it's what I find is amazing is that all of these individual hacks, they actually impact the area of brain and women's health, both areas positively. So it's not that like I only know one thing, or I only do one thing, and therefore it doesn't connect to the others. They're all interconnected, which has been amazing on my journey as well.
Yeah. So how did you get into brain health? Something about you hitting your head quite a lot?
Yeah. So I...
you didn't just get one concussion, right?
No, I've had six.
Six.
So yeah, they've ranged from a car accident to sports. And then the last one was about 15 months ago. And it was especially ironic, I would say, in that I was studying working memory in my neuroscience master's program when I hit my head on the dance floor.
Yeah. How do you hit your head on the dance floor?
You have a bad partner.
Bad partner. Yeah. Always someone else's fault.
It is. In this case, I would say so, yeah. No,
so was it like dirty dancing? You were being pulled up in the air and tipped over, or what happened?
I was being spun. And when you're being spun, you, especially as the female who's being led, you don't always have full control.
Yeah.
And so we bumped into another pair, and unfortunately, my partner decided not to grab me and protect me from falling on the floor. And so with the force of the turn, I hit my head twice on the floor. And kind of from there, everything shifted, like absolutely night and day. I mean, it was a doozy, and it changed me. And I went from being a really kind of bubbly person with, being high performing and go, and to now, I had brain fog, I had fatigue, nausea, amnesia, just total apathy, like not wanting to do anything. My emotions were all over the place. But I think the biggest thing was kind of light sensitivity and noise sensitivity and chronic headaches. So I'd wake up in the morning, have a headache, all day long, have a headache, go to sleep, headache. And it's one of those things where if any of you, your listeners, has had chronic pain, which I'm sure people have, it's debilitating because you don't know when it's going to end. and you feel completely powerless and completely, you don't know what to do. So for me, I think I went to one doctor, and the doctor said, did kind of 10-minute quick check. And she wrote on a prescription pad, okay, 9 tablets, paracetamol, ibuprofen mix. And that's when I said enough. I don't want to be in passive mode anymore. I want to be proactive. I want to be the driver for health and my own health, because I have to live with my body night and day versus any specialist. Even if they're giving me a lot of time, they only see me for an hour or whatnot. They don't have to live with this. So for me, I got really angry that I wasn't able to think clearly and that I wasn't in control. And so I said, okay, I'm going to learn, I'm going to read, I'm going to get knowledge. Because for me, if I have knowledge, I then have options. And if I have options, now I have control back. So I think that's where, going back to your question of how did I get into all of this, that's where this all stemmed from. It was, wanting to have control back. And so that's kind of, with this biohacking and health optimization journey has started.
Yeah. So concussions, that happens to a lot of people. I have one of my good friends that was from football, actually. He got the ball in the head. And I think he's been almost out for 7 years now, not been able to work full time since that. So it is really debilitating for when it goes wrong. So what did you do to get back on top, and how are you feeling today?
Yeah. Sorry to hear about your friend. It's a story that, especially when I tell my story, I hear a lot from other people as well about, oh yeah, and my friend has this, or my friend has that, or a family member. And it's, so I think, yeah, what you're saying about concussions, it's much more frequent than we think about it. And so for those who don't know what a concussion is, just to clarify, some people think it's you have to lose consciousness. Some people think that it has to be this massive thing, when it really doesn't. It can be a car accident, can be something quite large, but ultimately it's just when the head and your brain move really rapidly, and there's a blow. So it could be, you slip on the ice and you fall, and you think that, oh, I'll be fine. But what's insane is that what they're finding is that these weekend warriors, or people who do some sport on the weekend, they think, oh, in 2 days I'll be all right. Well, in reality, many concussions, that the symptoms can last for 2-3 weeks. Or there can be cases like mine, which is about a third of the cases, where the concussion symptoms, the TBI, traumatic brain injury symptoms, last for more than a month. Now, for me, it was probably, I would say, 13 months until I felt like 90% back. So right now, that it was about 15 months ago. So I'm still not back. I still have headaches, specifically when I'm around a computer. I know, but now I kind of know what to do. I know how to manage the pain, and I know some of the things that have helped me as well. So I do more of those. But maybe I can go through some of those. We can talk about kind of that brain health element and then shift into female health.
That would be great.
Yeah. Because I actually find them quite connected as well. So for me, I guess from a brain health standpoint, I didn't have any energy. So I would have a day where I would make a cup of tea, and that was it. I mean, like, we're done, and then I'm back in bed. A lot of doctors say for concussions, you just need to rest and stop using your brain. Because if you think about it, if you break your wrist, for example, what do?
Give it some rest.
You immobilize it. Exactly. So you completely stop it from being able to move, so that your body can naturally heal itself back together. So that's the protocol for concussions. They just say, rest, stay away from computers, don't have flickering light, don't read, stop using your brain.
And flickering light, for the people that don't know what that is?
Really any light right now that we use. So it can be your screen, any screen. So that can be your computer, that can be your cell phone, that can be your TV. Yeah. So any light that has some flicker rate behind it, which is every single light that is present in today's modern world. So LED lights, compact fluorescent lights, any of those, they all flicker. So if, for example, if you ever take a camera and you shine it against your screen, you'll, in a video, for example, you'll see that there's flickers where your eyes don't necessarily see it because it's flickering so fast, but it's happening behind the scenes.
Yeah. That's a good way to explain it.
Yeah. So in terms of concussions, basically what I ended up doing was I was lucky in that I was able to get away and go to a place that has sun for 300 plus days out of the year. And for 3 months, I just gave my brain time to heal, because I said, all right, if that's the only thing that everybody is telling me to do, then I'm going to go do that. So I swam, I meditated, I bathed in the sun, and I listened and listened and listened and listened to a lot of podcasts. And at the same time, I also was visiting specific kind of specialists. I think at this point I was like 14, 15 doctors that I had gone to who are each specialists in different areas. It could be, osteopathy, specific dentists, visual therapy, shamans at one point. I kind of did the whole gamut. But so what going back to what I was saying before was, because I had no energy whatsoever, I said, all right, well, I need energy. Food is energy. Therefore, let me look at my food. So I completely got rid of gluten. I got rid of sugar, caffeine. But the big thing that made a change for me was I had been a vegetarian for 7 years. And I completely shifted and I started eating fish because of the DHA. So DHA, I can never pronounce the I can't pronounce it, but it's the long chain omega-3 fatty acid that makes up your brain, and it's in human breast milk. It's actually 10 times higher in human breast milk than it is in cow's milk. And at one point, I think in the 90s, they had studies on neonates with and without DHA in their milk. And they noticed that babies who had DHA in their milk had greater cognition, greater vision. So they say that DHA is anti-inflammatory. It actually regrows synapses in your brain. So it's the thing that you need for optimal cellular signaling. So for me, DHA was huge. I completely shifted and went from not eating fish at all to now having fish like 4 or 5 times a week.
Yeah. So you did that as one of the first things.
Yeah. So DHA was the big change, I would say, and for me that helped with energy, that helped with clear thinking. I felt like I started getting myself back because what they also say is that DHA helps with inflammation, right? So with that inflammation of the brain, it helps clear some of that out and have clear thinking. So yeah. So then I shifted because when I started looking at brain health again, so food was the first thing, but then I kept on looking further and further and saying, all right, well, the brain, the heart, and the body, they all run on electricity. We're all an electrical being, right? So food is sustenance and food is what we need, surely, but food can come in different ways, right? It can come in the form of food. It can also come in the form of light and grounding and just getting electrons. Because if we're electrical beings, we run on electricity, we therefore need electrons, right? It's a pretty logical way of thinking, I guess. So then I started looking into light, grounding, and non-native EMFs. And I think all 3 of these things are really, really interesting when we start thinking not just about brain health, but also the direct link to female health as well, as we'll see later.
Yeah. So can you just put a few more words on the 3 different ones?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of light, I can go into it if you like, but I think Andy Mant gave a lot of good insight on a previous podcast you had.
Yeah, I'll link to that in the show notes as well. Yeah,
perfect. So I would recommend just listening to that one if you want a lot of detail on light. But for me, it boils down to light is energy. Yeah. Light enters our eyes and it hits our retinas and it converts to electrical signals. Those electrical signals fire off everything else in our bodies. So without light hitting either our retinas or our skin, we really would not be functioning, right? There's studies out there of people back in the 70s they had put people into bunkers, completely dark, away from light, and they started having a whole host of different health problems because they were away from light. So I think light there, it's the natural sunlight that you should be getting, which might be a little bit more difficult in the wintertime, but that's still, in Copenhagen, even if it isn't sunny, you should still be getting out and getting as much light on your skin as naturally possible. And then the other part is avoiding any of the blue light at night as well. Because blue light, I think everybody right now is starting to say that blue light is causing poor sleep, which it surely does. And that is a big problem. But I think the bigger issue is that it stops you from producing melatonin, which, yes, it details with sleep. But that melatonin is also the cleanup crew for the free radicals that you create during the day. So if you're not sleeping, if you're not producing melatonin, you don't have a janitor coming through and mopping up all of those free radicals. So free radicals is then leading us to inflammation, which propagates the problem. So I think blue light is linked to sleep, but linked to also a lot of health issues that people aren't necessarily kind of bringing into light just quite yet.
Yeah,
so I think
the ones that are not familiar with blue light, haven't listened to former episodes. It's the light you get from screens. It also comes from a lot of our light sources that we have today.
Yep, exactly. Blue light you'll see it on your phones as well. A lot of phone manufacturers are starting to waken up to this, and they're saying, okay, we'll have night shift mode. Yeah. So what night shift mode does is it reduces some of that blue light, but not enough.
Yeah, I saw you had some cool glasses on.
Yeah, I have my blue blockers. I'll send you guys the name of the company. It's Raw Optics if you guys are interested in that. So for me, light was huge because, again, I was waking up in the morning right at sunrise. I was staring at the sun. Sounds crazy, sounds hippie. It is. But at the same time, I was getting that the natural rays for the first hour of the sun. And I noticed that, my depression, my moodiness, my fatigue, my sleep was better. All of those things were almost gone. And then my sleep was better as well. I mean, in part because I was waking up at the crack of dawn, but at the same time, just my quality of sleep was incredible.
Did you track your sleep, or how did you know that it was better?
No, I did not track my sleep at that time. But I just felt like I was waking up much more rested. Yeah. And I wasn't waking up in the middle of the night, whereas before I had been. Yeah.
That's a pretty big factor.
Yeah. Sometimes with biohacking, it's funny because I think that it's a good thing that we're wanting to track all these things. But sometimes it's also, the easiest way to track, or one way to track, is how do you feel? Yeah. How do you ultimately what does your energy levels look like? And then, so light was one thing. Grounding, again, I'll talk really quickly on this one. So grounding, again, it sounds really hippie, but barefoot, walking on the ground, not on the cement, not on pavement, but literally walking on patches of earth, patches of park, patches of ground. And what that does is when you are walking or you're lying down, you end up picking up the free electrons from the earth. So the earth has its own resonance, and it is net negative. So when we're talking about electricity, the earth's core, the earth's surface, is negative. And so when we lie on the earth or we walk barefoot, think back to the last time you were barefoot. Probably it was, in the summertime or on the beach. And everybody says, oh, well, yeah, I feel much better when I'm on vacation. Well, surely it's because you're not stressed out, but also because you're usually outside, out in the sun, walking barefoot. You're getting all of these amazing, beautiful benefits that we just don't have or we don't do in the modern day world. Yeah. So grounding, what ends up happening is when people start talking about antioxidants, right? Everybody, it's like the fad for the past couple of years, and they say, oh, well, you need to have blueberries or you need to have acai or whatnot, right? And they say that antioxidants help to fight free radicals. Well, what are free radicals? Free radicals are the byproducts of your cells making energy. So it's an uncharged valence electron. So if I pair that uncharged that unpaired electron with another free electron from the earth, then it's no longer unstable, right? And so grounding, what it ultimately does, it does the exact same thing as eating antioxidants or blueberries or whatnot. And it's free because you can walk outside anytime and just be barefoot. You just look a little crazy in the park in London, for example, walking barefoot.
And in Copenhagen when it's really cold. But
Yeah,
that's all right. Do you have any reviews or some scientific papers that can back it up? So I know a lot of people are talking about grounding, not grinding, but grounding. Two very different things. Do you know about any articles and so on that we can refer the really skeptical people? I think it's very intuitively that you go out and you feel it, but for people that don't really feel that difference in their body.
Yeah, I have a number that I'll probably just send to you, and then we can link it in the show notes. Is that all right?
That would be great.
Okay. There's loads out there. There's a number of different books out there as well. I mean, electricity as a field with relation to the body has been studied since the 60s at least. Yeah. So it's amazing. I mean, we do have a lot of studies out there. I'll just make sure that I send them to you after this.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dasha. So that was 3 things. What else did you do?
So the last thing, and this is one that I definitely will send you a bunch of articles because there's so much, is non-native electromagnetic fields. Yeah. So electromagnetic field is it's a physical field that's produced by electrically charged objects. That's the definition. Now, you can have native electromagnetic field, which is the Earth, which is, it's been measured, and it's called the Schumann resonance, SCHUMANN, Schumann resonance. And so they've measured the Earth, which is at 7.83 hertz. And that's the native, it's called native EMF. There's also what's called non-native EMF. So non-native EMF there's a whole spectrum of these things. So it can be X-rays, it can be gamma rays, it can be the TV, it can be wireless, your Wi-Fi, your phones, your hair dryers, anything that has a battery or is plugged in is the way that I think of it.
Yeah.
Right. So just as a comparison, the Earth is at 7.83 hertz. An iPhone is at 2.7 gigahertz. So 2.7 billion times faster than the Earth. So the magnitude of these waves, when we're thinking about waves, and the frequency is quite huge. The wavelengths vary quite a bit. So the reason that EMFs and non-native EMFs is what they're called, is starting to become more interesting and part of the conversation about health is that we're starting to see the potential harms. So some of them, and people are starting to even call it out and say that they are what's called electrohypersensitive. Yeah. So in countries like the UK, you can be, it's a malady that you can say, yes, I am electrohypersensitive, and then it's a condition, right? Not all countries have yet recognized it as such, but that's one of them. So the potential harms. So the main one is that EMFs, they introduce too much calcium into your cells. So via the voltage-gated calcium channels, your cells end up having too much calcium inside. What that means is that you end up having more oxidative stress and much more inflammation. So that can look like, it disrupts your nerve cell communication. It can increase free radicals. It can have sleep disruption, neural development. And then the one that intrigued me the most, especially from a brain standpoint, was the breakdown of the blood-brain barrier. So that was the part that got me interested in that. That means that if I'm eating something, that may not be very good, or if my environment has a lot of toxins, then potentially all of those toxins are going into my brain because my blood-brain barrier now has more holes in it, and it starts to look like Swiss cheese. And so the toxins from the environment are getting into my brain. So EMFs have that potential damage. They also potentially increase cortisol levels, which is a key stress hormone. Also, one of the doctors, Dr. Klinghardt in Europe, says that people who live in a high EMF environment have higher biomarkers for inflammation. So when we start talking about, and a lot of people are linking inflammation of your body to various different diseases. So if we take that as, as a fact, that EMFs, so my iPad, my phone, everything that's around me that has a battery or has a charge, potentially is increasing my inflammation, and all of these diseases are linked to inflammation, then we can draw the natural conclusion that your EMFs are causing a lot of these diseases, a lot of these modern diseases.
And so what about when you put your phone on flight mode?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So airplane mode is fantastic. My phone, and that's one of the hacks that I've done, my phone is almost perpetually on airplane mode. And if people really need to get to me, it's on airplane mode, but with Wi-Fi turned on. But I will turn off the radio signal to the telephone towers. So airplane mode helps. It very much helps. It does not fix everything, right? You're going to definitely reduce your EMF. And I have an EMF meter, and it will reduce it, but it will not completely kill it and squash it. So
that's
for
really
me,
interesting when people are sleeping. So when you're sleeping with your phone right next to your head. So I put mine on flight mode. So that's only kind of doing the trick. It's not really totally helping it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's I'll send you something after that you can also post. I'll do a video where I'll show my meter with the phone on airplane mode, off of airplane mode, and completely switched off, and so you can see the difference. Because yes, it will reduce, but it is still giving off a signal. It is still giving off an EMF. Because it's still a battery, right? So it's no longer transmitting information, but the battery is still charged. And therefore, because the battery is charged, it still is giving off an electromagnetic field around it.
So it's actually not good to charge your batteries in your bedroom?
Absolutely not. I would highly recommend throwing that phone out of the bedroom as far away as possible.
And same with laptop and your other devices.
Yes, absolutely.
So a friend of mine asked me a really good question that he wanted me to ask on the podcast. Also on next podcast I'm having. So how big of a difference does it make? And I know the answer is super complex because it varies on each individual. And I think that's the key point, that for some people that are more sensitive, it matters more. And people that are less sensitive, it matters less. But any takes on that otherwise? Oh,
yeah. So, yes, it varies, right? That's obvious. But it, so for example, just as an aside, one of my friends is so electrohypersensitive that if she was around a phone like that with multiple, let's say there was multiple devices around her, she would be bruised. She would physically look bruised. Like her body would look as if somebody punched her because she's so sensitive. Versus with me, I have a minor headache. Versus perhaps you don't feel it at all.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, that a lot of people don't realize that they're sensitive. But what they're finding right now is there's a latency period of about 10 years. So depending on your usage, so let's say you used to work in an area that had a lot of computers and a lot of servers, a lot of modems. Perhaps your tolerance, it'll take quicker for you to become electrohypersensitive because you've been exposed to so much, right? Versus perhaps a farmer who almost never sees a device and just has one cell phone. It'll take him longer to get to that same level of electrohypersensitivity. But they are showing that it's 10 years down the line of constant use that people are starting to actually see a lot of diseases and maladies. But yeah, I mean, going back to your question before of kind of what should your bedroom look like in specific, I would say, I have blackout blinds. Or if I'm traveling, I'll just have a sleep mask. But from an EMF standpoint, everything is switched off. If I'm in a hotel room, I'm unplugging the refrigerator. I'm unplugging every single device I possibly can. So it's not even taking any charge from the outlet. My phone is usually being charged in the bathroom. And I have an alarm clock that I travel with, so that I don't have to use my phone as the alarm clock.
Cool. And what about turning off the phone? So I actually have a spare phone that I use for my gratitude journal. so that I write down in notes every night before I go to bed 3 things that I'm grateful for. And then I have
nice.
it on airplane mode, but it's still lying really close to my head. Would it help if I turn it off and pull it out of the charger, or would it still have a negative effect?
Yeah, so I would say in order of magnitude, the worst is having the phone completely on, then it's having it on airplane mode, then it's turned off and charging, and then it's turned off. So I would recommend either you turn it off and you charge it away from the bed completely, so that if you do need to be charging it, let's say, right? Yeah. Or if you don't need to be charging it, then just turn off the phone and put it by your bed. Yeah. If it's one of those kind of last things that you do before sleep, yeah, just turn it off, because then the battery is completely off.
Yeah. Noted.
Yep. The other thing is, for anybody out there who, likes Bluetooth devices or, those Airpods or whatnot, in a nutshell, you're frying your brain. So I would, they may be great and they may be productive and they may look cool. But in light of everything that I've learned about brain health, I would say that is an absolute no-no. And for your kids as well, because kids have much more water weight than we do as adults. So what that means is water is a conductor. So if water is a conductor and kids have more water weight, then naturally they're being affected by EMFs a lot more than we are. So if we're thinking about phones, if we're thinking about iPads, computers, all that stuff, I mean, they're getting blasted, completely blasted and fried, because one of the other things that EMFs do is they dehydrate you. And on top of that, probably kids aren't drinking enough water as it is. So their cells are slowly starting to cry out and say, and over time, especially if they're continually texting and Instagramming and, tweeting or whatever they're doing, it's just, they're progressively getting more and more dehydrated, and their cells are being pummeled with calcium, which is leading to inflammation. So I guess one of the things that, there's a doctor, her name is Dr. Erica Mallory Blythe. And one of the things that she talks about is how, going forward, probably at some point here, we will be looking at cell phones as just as bad as giving a kid a cigarette. It's going to be deemed as bad as that, because right now we're not looking at the detriments, because we don't know what they are. Because again, there's a 10-year latency period. We are just getting to the point now where people are starting. People have had cell phones for a while now, and so and the increase of use of laptops, people are. We're just starting to see all the negative side effects. But if you look into how cell phones were even regulated, that's another story for another time. But in a nutshell, the regulation has not been updated for 20 years now. Now, in the time when cell phones first came out, and now there's a lot of things that have changed. There's more of us using cell phones, and they've become more powerful, and we're using them more frequently. So the regulation that we had 20 years ago was based on the idea, it was based on a 200-pound headed man. So that's not me, that's not you, that's not many of us. No. And the idea was, if his brain, the thought was, if his brain increase in temperature by 2 degrees, then that was deemed as bad. That was deemed as something that was negative to his brain health. What we're finding now is it doesn't necessarily have to be thermal effects in order for it to be detrimental. So it doesn't have to be, if you're looking at the spectrum, there's ionizing and non-ionizing electromagnetic fields. So the things that are non-ionizing, i.e. power lines, AMF radio, TV, Wi-Fi, those things, they may not increase the temperature of our brains, but they are having detrimental effects. And even back then, they used to always say, do not hold, look at the fine print. That's another interesting thing. If you look at the fine print on your phone, a lot of times they'll say, don't hold your phone. You're not supposed, it's 5 millimeters or something, I think it is, that you're supposed to not to be away from your phone. That's mental. I mean, none of us do that,
True. So I always wear my headset. And that's one of the other interesting things with Bluetooth, and then wearing a headset 10 hours, 12 hours a day when you're working. I saw someone doing a review where he was testing different headsets, Bluetooth headsets, about which ones were emitting the most EMF. And the Bose one that I have were apparently some of the ones that emitted the least. And he was like, the benefit it gives me not to have to walk around with a plug on and so on, I think outweighs it for me. But of course, it depends on how sensitive you are to EMF.
Sure, of course. And I think that's the other thing with all of this stuff. Like all of this is, when you're informed, then you can actually decide whether you care or not, like when you know about blue light, then you can say, well, actually that really doesn't, I don't think I'm that sensitive to it, and we move on. But I think being informed, so then you can make decisions and you have options on it. That's what it comes down to, because otherwise we're just kind of driving blind,
Yeah.
But in terms of headphones, if the things I would recommend is one, be on a speaker as much as possible. So whenever I'm on the phone, it's usually on a speaker. Two is if you do need to be on headphones, then I would recommend against Bluetooth, but again, to each their own. But if you are looking for headphones that are wired, there's these things called AirTube headphones, which are pretty good. And what they do is they, like, for the first maybe a half a foot from your brain down to somewhere in the middle of the cord, it's a hollow tube, and so the sound gets to your brain still. You can still hear pretty well, but it's through a hollow tube that the sound reverberates through, rather than through a metal coil.
Interesting. I have to look into that. We'll get a link for that as well.
Sure.
So how does all of this fit into female health, and anything else that needs to be done to the brain?
Yeah, I mean, those are the big ones. It's those are the ones that really have worked for me. I mean, for anybody who has a concussion, I think every concussion is different. I also had really good benefit with hyperbaric oxygen. It helped me tremendously. One of the thoughts there is that you're in a chamber. Oxygen is, you get more of it. You're breathing in more oxygen, and it's a pressurized chamber. So therefore, the molecules become smaller and they can go into your blood plasma. So then your entire body gets oxygenated, and we know what that does for our cells, which is what we need. Because especially if you're living in a city, I believe the number is like 21% is how much oxygen we're breathing and we're getting in a city, which we need much, much more than that. I don't know the exact amount, but 21% seems kind of low to me. So hyperbaric oxygen, if it's something that's available to you, or in your city or around you, I would give it a go. I mean, for me, I was flying with energy afterwards for like 2-3 days. But I don't think it's usually covered by insurance. So it's something, just to look into. But in terms of, otherwise for brain health, again, it was light, DHA, grounding, non-native EMF, just staying as far away as possible, or just mitigating some of your exposure for EMFs. But how does this all tie into female health? So I think one thing is I'm really just beginning to learn more and more and more about female health, in part because I'm seeing some of my friends have issues that I really don't like, and I want to know more about it so I can help out. And same thing for myself. So we've just recently started a Facebook group for women dedicated to this conversation about health. And I think what I've loved about it is I've learned a lot. And I think with these types of communities where people are really open and they share and they, it's typically that people have had a problem of some sort. So for example, me with my concussions, and they've tried so many different things. They've been through the pain and the frustration and the annoyance and whatever it is, that they've become experts on that area, if you will. And so it's nice because these people are kind of dedicated to learning more, and they're excited for betterment as well, because they potentially have hit rock bottom, and it's kind of only up from there. So the Facebook group is a great way that I'm starting to learn more and more about female health.
Cool. Any one thing or two main things about female health?
Oh my gosh. There's loads. I would say, Yeah, I mean, we don't have that much time to talk that much about it, but
so if someone wants to dive into female health, what would be the first place to start?
Hormones. Absolutely hormones. So when people talk about female health, they think it's just about the menstrual cycle. It's absolutely not. It is about inflammation and hormones. So the top reasons right now for female kind of health concerns, it's cancer, it's heart disease, it's gynecological health, it's depression and anxiety, it's osteoarthritis. I mean, there's a lot of them out there, but I think hormones is the big one because hormones are the chemical messengers that tell your body what to do. For men as well, right? So it's not just like, oh, she's hormonal in a negative way. It's the messengers that tell us about our metabolism, about our mood, about reproduction. So if your hormones are out of balance, then you have anxiety and you're moody and hungry, and it kind of adds tension to your life unnecessarily. So from a female perspective, if you're looking into hormones, usually it's your thyroid. So in the 1980s, the thyroid problems were really rare. Now I think it's like 1 in 8 women will have thyroid problems over the course of their life. So your thyroid is the key to your health, to your female health. And I think what's causing a lot of our thyroid problems right now is the iodine in your food. We're not getting enough because we're not eating enough fish. And low iodine in food ends up having issues in your thyroid as well as your breast tissues and your mammary glands. And then stress. You've got stress and cortisol. Cortisol then kind of leads into the whole entire cycle of leptin resistance, insulin resistance, adrenal resistance. So I think in terms of if you're trying to get control over your hormones, that's the number one thing for females. So what that comes down to is figuring out your cycle, because we should be regular. It should not be something that you don't know if it's coming or not. You don't know, it's not predictable or whatnot. You really need to figure out your cycle. And the way to do that, I think, is testing. So if you're going to be testing, there's a number of different labs out there. I'll run through the ones that, like the top ones that I would say, if that's helpful. So the top ones, your thyroid, again, is your number one thing that you need to be looking at. But make sure that when you do your test, it's not just your TSH. You need to look at T3 and T4 as well. Those ones will help you out and help figure out whether your thyroid is functioning or not. And if your thyroid's not functioning, then you're not getting the messengers to start your hormones to go down through the rest of your body. The next one is the highly sensitive C-reactive protein, HSCRP. That tells you about your inflammation. Then I would look at iodine, iron, selenium. All of them are going to give you different information on how your body is working. I'm not going to go into detail now. The other ones are pregnenolone, progesterone, estrogen, LDL cholesterol, and vitamin D3. So vitamin D3 is a huge one. Again, sunlight is a big one there. You can supplement, but the problem with supplementing vitamin D is that most of the supplements are vitamin D2 and not vitamin D3. Now, if you want to have a natural version of vitamin D3, that is going back to what I said about brain health, it's seafood. It's DHA. So we come full circle, or sunlight, if you get out in the sun, and if it's good sun, in 30 minutes, you can make 30,000 IUs rather than the 5,000 IUs of vitamin D3 that most people take per day. Yeah. Those would be my top ones.
Cool. Any people to follow in regards to female health that you could recommend, that you get inspired by? Apart from my
Rhonda
podcast,
Patrick,
of course.
Yeah, Rhonda Patrick, I think, is great. She doesn't talk too much about female health. Honestly, a lot of the people that I follow about a lot of the information that I get on female health, I find is kind of a half-truth. I say that not meaning to poo-poo on anybody, but I think that they're not seeing the big picture, right? And they're linking thyroid health with food. And I think food is only a piece of the puzzle. So for me, although he does not talk about female health quite as much. For me, the person to follow is Jack Kruse. He's a neurosurgeon, and he talks a lot about light, water, magnetism, and then food as well. But for me, he kind of gives the full picture of everything that I've been talking about. So Kruse, Kruse. His information, I think, is tough to listen to, tough to understand because he gives a lot of science there. So I would just start out with his podcasts and YouTube, and then migrate further on into, his blog and his forum and things like that.
Yeah, I'll get a link for that. Before we round off, Health Optimization Summit. What's gonna happen? Tell us some more about that.
Oh boy. So we have this vision. We have this vision that health is not about these individual silos. It's not about saying, oh, I'm paleo or I'm keto or I'm vegan or I'm this or I'm that. We think that health is multifaceted, and we think that health has a number of different kind of elements to it. And those elements involve, it could be the gut, the mind, the body, energy, and environment. Like all 5 of those things for us they all exist, and they exist in a delicate balance that we need to attend to. So when we started thinking about, health optimization, we were saying, well, let's bring together the best minds to talk about health holistically, right? Let's bring Eastern and Western folks together to say, okay, wait, our environment and the blue light, how does that impact our gut? How does that impact our energy? How do all these 5 elements combine together? So we are putting together a summit. It's going to be in London in August. So August 31st to September 1st. And you should all come. So it'll be, we have a website up. It's healthoptimization.com. And if you're interested in learning more, you can find more information on Instagram. And if you want to connect with me and find out more about it, or if you want to volunteer or get involved, there's a lot of really, really interesting and smart people that are in this space. And I'm fascinated to just be able to work with them and learn from them. So if you want to volunteer or help out, just message me. I'm at Instagram at _dash of health, DASH of health.
Sounds good. We'll get that in the show notes. And I think I'll be there as well. That could be very interesting to see.
What do you mean you think? What do you mean you think?
I will be there. I'll probably come with Martin. So
there we go.
Yeah, need to get into the calendar. I just got the invite yesterday. So that's going to be awesome. So before we round off, Dasha, any last tips or summing up, like 1 to 3 advice you would get to the listeners out there?
Yes. I would say 1, DHA. Start having it. Start having a lot of it. You will see tremendous benefits. 2, light. Get the sunlight in the morning. Block your blue light. And 3, stop or reduce or minimize the amount of time that you are around non-native EMFs, and learn as much as you can about EMFs, because I think that they're a large cause for many of our health problems today.
Yeah. And where can people find you if they want to follow you? Do you have any kind of social media, or you're totally off the grid?
I'm not totally off the grid. I'm starting to get into it. I'm not very good. I'm not going to lie. But I'm on Instagram _dash of health. And I think the other thing is if you are a female, it is unfortunately or fortunately only for females. But if you are a female, if you want to join us on the Facebook group, it's Biohacking Women is the group. So if you just add on to it, then we can answer a couple of the questions and then and join us in the conversation there.
Sounds good. Dasha, thank you so much for taking the time. Super educational. Appreciate it.
Perfect. Glad to be here, and hope to see you guys all at the Health Optimization Summit.
We will. Looking very much forward to it.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Growth Island. Be sure to subscribe for more episodes on how to be the best version of yourself. And if you found this show helpful, then please leave us a review so more people will learn about the podcast, or share it with a friend who can benefit from it too. Thank you again, and have a wonderful day.